Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hi there. Welcome or welcome again. Um, yeah, so there's
Some familiar faces
some
now.
familiar faces. Yeah, it's the hardcore this morning.
It's too sunny outside, that's the problem.
It's great to see, actually. Yeah, so my name's Buddha Savika. I'm in Manchester, well, North Manchester at the moment. But yeah, I'm really happy to be giving this talk on the second of the four reminders. And so, yeah, so what I thought the format for this session could be is that I do like a talk for 30 minutes and then do some sort of a guided reflection, during which time I'll set questions for a group also for half an hour. Um, I'll take a comfort break and then groups for 20 minutes to discuss the questions that arose in the guided reflection, and then like a plenary right at the end for about half an hour. So yeah, as I say, the environment is, or the environmental emergency is something which I've decided to put my heart and soul into because, well, I don't think we can wait, basically. Um, yeah, so the title of my talk, I said, well, I thought the title could be, and it was during my recent retreat at Padmaloka when, like a Moby tune, "We Are All Made of Stars." It kept turning up in my awareness. So I thought it was a bit of a nicer topic than death is certain. So yeah, but I just wanted to talk about taking the middle ground somehow. Um, between nihilism and eternalism, neither of which are completely satisfactory. So I'll be doing this talk half off my computer and half off my brain. So yeah, you can probably tell which way around it is. Um, yeah, so just to start with, in 2002, Moby gave me a title for this talk, "We Are All Made of Stars," and he said, on a basic quantum level, all matter in the universe is essentially made up of stardust. And so the lyrics to his song go, "People they come together, people they fall apart. No one can stop us now. We are all made of stars." I'm not going to sing, thankfully. But I thought that was a little bit profound when when I was thinking about it at Padmaloka. As I said, the brief for this talk was to bring the second of the four reminders to mind when speaking about the climate crisis. So the second of the four reminders is all conditioned things are subject to decay and death. Yeah, so I have, funny to say, but I've been always quite fascinated by death. And so when I was a young kid, I would lie on the floor and play dead as a practical joke. Weird child. But a few years later, I remember crying inconsolably when I thought of death. So the two opposite ends of the spectrum there. At one end, I was sort of, yeah, and these entered my thoughts when I was coming up with this talk. So just to say that in 2010, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and whilst I'll let you know, the first thing that I learnt about it and the first thing that I googled was, "Is it going to kill me?" And happily, I learned that it wouldn't. Um, it could possibly, reduce the lifespan that I have by say 5 years or something. But the MS itself isn't going to kill me. but I thought it was interesting that's the first thing that came to mind, soon after my diagnosis. Um, 12 years later, 2022, I was ordained, which meant a significant study into Buddhism and self discovery. Um, yeah, so I'll talk a bit more about my ordination process later because it very much comes out of my MS diagnosis, or it's kind of yeah, the two are linked. So anyway, I was diagnosed with MS in 2010, and life just continued like normally. I was working full time, and I was still running. Did 4 marathons actually, not after my diagnosis, but just before. So I was very into running and very into sort of. I think I was defined in a way by my physicality in that I was, I was this runner, and I was a guy who was very physically fit and active, and that made me kind of feel good. But I think that was the first mistake that I made because I was tying um, my kind of my esteem, my projected worth on something that wasn't fixed and solid. Everyone's health declines, and it just so happened that mine declined. Started to decline some years later, actually. In about 2017, I was re-diagnosed. I was first diagnosed in 2010 with relapsing remitting, and so it comes and goes. And then in 2017, my condition got worse, um, and I was diagnosed with secondary progressive. It's called, and so basically, you're always getting worse. Um, so that at that time, I stopped working. I was working at the University of Manchester as a web designer, but at that time, I thought, well, actually, I'm gonna stop doing this job that I don't really like, and I'm gonna concentrate on trying to do some really good stuff, like with with Buddhism and Dharma and things. So yeah, so at that point, I did quit my job. I did start claiming benefits, and I've been pretty much doing that ever since. My condition now is as such that I need a kind of a crutch to get around, really. I've got a wheelchair and I've got a scooter. I don't like to use them that much because obviously it's good to be on your legs with a condition like mine. But yeah, so I've been quite I've been I suppose I don't want to sound too like funny about it, but I suppose I feel like I've been given this chance to practice the Dharma, and I've been given the space and time to be able to do that in the wake of my diagnosis. So I mentioned before about Padmaloka and my ordination process, and it was just riddled with me, you know, making the ordination team cross by doing stupid things, basically refusing to admit that I actually had a condition that was limiting things that I could do realistically. But I did things like try full length prostrations in a shrine room and bust my chin open and had to be taken to hospital at that time. Then I went for a walk on my own with my swimming stuff and just happily said that I was going to go for a swim in the river. So yeah, there was another time that I went out walking with Sachi Raja and basically had to be carried back. Um, and so the list is quite long of misdemeanors that I got into when I was there. In fact, I mentioned that I was just there recently, and that's the first time that I've been allowed back in 5 years. And so since they last saw me, I've been ordained. I'm sort of a bit more together. or quite a lot more together really, very much more at peace with my condition, because there's no point in kind of struggling against it. And I think that's another expression of ego. So yeah, so I have been deluded through my early MS diagnosis and also at Padmaloka, and it just made me reflect actually when I was back there that clearly eternalism and nihilism were at play. Um, so eternalism being a longing for things to be like unchanging and last forever and stuff, and nihilism is just a desire to cut it all off and just just be completely hedonistic really. I think clearly eternalism is best in our society, and it's what we've been conditioned towards, with our Christian conditioning. I think it also means that people take better care of the planet when they are an eternalist, and also it's good for positive emotion. So I was doing, in relation to this, I was doing some reading around eternalism and nihilism and how it relates to the Dharma. And so I read Subuti's paper in 2011 when he wrote his paper Revering and Relying upon the Dharma. And he made reference to eternalism and nihilism. And he said, according to the Buddha, there are two kinds of fundamental wrong view: eternalist and nihilist. Various forms of theistic belief are the characteristic examples of eternalism. Nihilism very often leads to absorption in a very narrow pursuit of pleasure and carelessness about denial of moral values. Denial of moral values. Right view brings us back to what can clearly be seen in our experience, whether or not it's happening in any particular moment, and what we have found to be wise. So I kind of reflected on this, and yeah, I started to listen to a talk by Sangharakshita in 1984 when he started talking about the problem with death in his talk entitled Buddhism, Will, Peace and Nuclear War. And he says that the Buddha's long voice of sanity prevented a war 25 centuries ago. The possibility of a nuclear holocaust not only represents the greatest threat to humanity that has ever been faced, but also the greatest opportunity. It means we must all rise to our full stature as human beings or perish. So then, what are we to do? So I thought then, well, we can only give a refuge, as we say in the Triratna tradition, to the three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. As we know, all conditioned things are subject to decay and death, which the Buddha saw for himself. Say 25 centuries ago when he saw like a dead man, a sick man, an old man, and a holy man. The four sights. Um, so there's a problem with death, even for him. There's a problem insofar as he didn't have the answer to it, which he went on to, study and practice. So yeah, so it's quite interesting that it's been a problem all this time, and actually we're the only species in the world that can be aware of our own mortality. So it does represent a significant problem for us. Sangharakshita says there are 6 classes of sentient beings. This is according to the Wheel of Life, like a Tibetan scroll painting. There's gods, anti-gods, men, animals, hungry ghosts, and beings in the state of torment. These 6 classes of sentient being occupy the 6 principal worlds or spheres of the six segments of the wheel. So he then says whether we live in a hell realm or a heaven realm, we should still be the subject of impermanence, the demon of death glaring at us over the edge of the wheel. Then it goes on to say the Buddha stands beside and above the wheel of life. In some Tibetan scroll paintings, the Buddha is depicted in the top right hand corner, well outside the wheel, with one hand pointing up in the upward direction. He's pointing out the way to nirvana, the state where there is no death because there is no birth. So, in his talk, he later goes on to say if we solve the problem of death, the problem of birth, the problem of craving, then we shall be able to live in the world like the Buddha and his disciples did. We shall be able to join them in chanting those celebrated verses of the Dhammapada. And it says, happy indeed we live, friendly amid the hateful. Among men who hate, we dwell free from hate. This is from the Dhammapada. Happy indeed we live, healthy among the sick. Among men who are sick with craving, we dwell free from sickness. Happy indeed we live, content amid the greedy. Among men who are greedy, we dwell free from greed. Happy indeed we live, for whom there is no attachment. Feeders on rapture shall be like the gods of brilliant light. Victory begets hatred, for the defeated experiences suffering. The tranquil one experiences happiness, giving up both victory and defeat. So, I think that there is a middle way to be trodden. I think there is an obvious kind of draw towards eternalism in our society, and with good reason. Um, with nihilism, as I explained earlier, I think I was on a hiding to nothing when I was doing all those things for my ego at Padmaloka. Um, yeah, so yeah, made their life quite difficult. I made my own life quite difficult, and it was just during the COVID lockdown that I actually managed to do a bit of self reflection and think about, some sort of a middle way between the two extremes of nihilism and eternalism. And I think this could be well applied, to the planet. I mean, the planet isn't going to last forever, and the planet hopefully is not going to be destroyed tomorrow. But there's some sort of middle way that we can take. The Earth, the solar system, the galaxy, we're all going to come to an end at some point. They've been conditioned, and when that condition comes to an end, they will cease to exist. And so, so I would say just finally that all conditioned things are impermanent. One day I will die, one day you will die, one day the earth will die. But let's not kill it for our children. So that's my talk. Thanks for listening to that. As you probably learned by now, I'm not the world's greatest talker because basically the my cognitive side due to the MS doesn't really compute. I can reel off things off the top of my head, um, but um, but yeah. So perhaps doing a few reflections might be a bit easier for me to do and easier for you to listen to. So I've got some written down here. So let's just try and find it. Yeah, so just finding your posture on the seat, just making contact with the surface. So the backs of your thighs, feet on the floor, small of your back on the chair. Just taking a few breaths from the energetic earth. So doing a few rounds of earth breathing to align the your spine, so the longest shape as it is, just inviting a sense of a uplift in your spine. So you're solid on the floor like a mountain. You kind of your body's in the air like the sky. We want to occupy the middle ground between being too slouchy and being too, being too bolt upright. It's just a good idea to align yourself somewhere in between. So just coming into our bodies, just starting from the head, the crown of the head, and just feeling the tactile sensations in the crown of the head. So moving across the forehead now to the eyebrows. Just feeling the skin relax at the eyebrows and the skin between the eyebrows. And just noticing the skin at the temples. Which will soften the actual eyes if you've been staring into the screen. So releasing now the skin behind your ears where the glasses touch. Then releasing the skin at the upper lip where guys grow a moustache. And just releasing the jaw, the lips and the tongue. And having the cavity of your mouth just unobstructed. See if you can become aware of your gums, as weird as it is to say. And just at the top of the spine where it joins the base of your skull, that joint, the atlas joint, just having some awareness here. And just sweeping across both shoulders, let the shoulder joints open, let the arms fall at your shoulders like a waterfall. Just collecting at the palms of your hands. So you can just feel the rise and the fall of your chest with the breath. And the echo of the breathing in the stomach, let the stomach be soft. Just on your sitting bones, just supporting your trunk, just have an awareness of the pelvic joints again, just open. And the legs just falling out of your pelvic joints, again like a waterfall, collecting at the poles of your feet, the fizzy sensations there. So just sitting with your whole body in awareness. So I'm going to drop a couple of questions in. Just let them land and see if you can just let them drop into your heart like a pebble in a pond. My first question is, do you have examples of eternalism or nihilism in your life? So again, that's, do you have examples of eternalism or nihilism in your life? Just let that percolate around for a while. So do you have examples of eternalism or nihilism in your own life? And the second one is, are you prepared to look at the consequences on yourself and others? So are you prepared to look at the consequences on yourself and others? So what's on the plan now? So I think it's a, did I say? It's a comfort break. And if you come back, we can do groups, breakout groups. And then finally, we'll just have a plenary at the end, just to round up everything. Okay. Thanks for now.
So back here in 10 minutes?
But yeah, back here in 10. Yep.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was just checking in with my partner at the break, and she gave me quite a good idea, actually. She said, an example of nihilism possibly could be her, wanting to travel loads before she dies. See. Oh, God, sorry about that. I forgot to stop me bell. Oops. So an example of nihilism perhaps could be that, well, I've got to do these things. I've got to I've got to do these things before I die. This is my only opportunity, and by sort of flying to destination, she's sort of doing the planet no good with the air travel. So maybe that's an example of like tying nihilism to the climate. But I'd be interested to hear what you make of that in your groups. Hey everyone, we just had a fantastic discussion in our group. Um, yeah, so I think the way that I out of necessity, really, have linked this to the climate crisis is with my physicality. I was saying about my MS diagnosis, and a lady in my group shared that she found it helpful if when I was saying in that like guided reflection that I was doing that you know on the one hand I wasn't too slouchy, and on the one hand I wasn't too bolt upright. And maybe that could be a metaphor for the eternalism nihilism thing. So I think actually to be somewhere in between would be quite a useful place to be, really. Yes, I'm just wondering if what all your groups were chatting about, and if someone would be willing to share. Maybe like one person from each group or something, if you're comfortable with that, or maybe put it in the chat if you like.
I can share from our group if you like.
Yeah.
Had a lovely chat. Lots of sort of interpretations and viewpoints. Felt like most of us, when talking about nihilism, we were talking about how it's kind of we felt that in our lives when we were like quite disconnected from other people and the world and tired, and link this to the sort of feelings of despair and not being able to like do anything, not being able to have any impact, and like the inability for change. And then we talked about eternalism, and we sort of talked a little bit about the sort of the aging process and how life isn't gonna last forever, and then also about that feeling of that sort of youth versus like aging feeling of when you're young you feel like life is going to last forever, but then sort of you realize that it doesn't. And I guess there's some like sort of false beliefs there that we talked about sort of learning from. But then we did talk about the things that we thought were eternal that were important, and we mentioned things like love and like kindness and sort of the importance of life itself. And I think we sort of came to a discussion about how even though as individuals we aren't eternal, the sort of actions we have and the consequences that we have on the world and other people and things, it lasts on and affects other things, and in some way that is eternal. And then we kind of had a bit of chat about linking it to the Dharma and like karma, and it's I think we all felt that it's sort of like there is some sort of eternal truth or eternal values to the universe, and that's why we practice, and that's what gives us purpose. Trying to see what those eternal things were without, I guess, whilst also not saying that us as individuals or any sort of individual being is eternal as a being, but saying sort of the larger laws of the universe and the Dharma.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Roy. It's very, very kind of helpful to hear that. So did we have, was there 4 groups? So I just wonder if any other group fancied sort of saying something related to this.
You know, I could just share a tiny bit from our group, it won't be comprehensive. I think we sort of shared our experiences, but sort of just getting a general sense maybe of some of the history and the different things we're doing, different. I suppose one of the main things that came out was just different sort of engagement, or starting to engage, or just starting to think about something, or you know, been thinking about this and active for years. There was a whole range in our group. If anyone from a group wants to add from that, I think for me, I think hearing that is more about something about just starting where you're at, and just the present is now as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, you silly. I think positive emotion is going to be quite important when it comes down to all this kind of stuff, and I suppose that does tie in quite a bit to eternalism, like I was saying. I'm just interested if anyone else had some similar reflections. Yeah, we had a very interesting chat in our group, and there was one person in the group who was, you know, they were employed as a climate change professor, and they said, you know, sometimes it's difficult to remain positive in the face of all this stuff. So I suspect, even though maybe we are trying to find the middle way, I suspect to err on the side of eternalism is better for ourselves and better for us going forward if we, you know, if we act like, you know, this is for keeps, this is what we need to protect, this is good, and rather than, you know, it all come crashing down. I hope I've made some sort of sense today. There's you're a collection of probably some quite confused. Well, I think everyone's confused, aren't they, when it comes to climate change and, you know, what the best course of action is. But just to sort of you know, start talking about this stuff, I think is so important. So yeah, just like to thank everyone for coming, really, and yeah, look forward to catching you at some point in the retreat. As in, you got anything else? Sorry, Bryony.
Yeah, we haven't reported back, but I
Oh,
don't,
sorry.
I don't
Right.
want to report back. I think maybe somebody else could report back.
Well, we said lots of things, didn't we?
We did.
We did. But I'm still thinking about our conversation and where we got to. And maybe what's uppermost in my mind at this point is that determinism and nihilism are like two poles. Sangha actually describes it like this, and that what we need to do is to develop the skill of moving between them. And I think our experience, well, my experience is one of banging from one to the other, and sometimes experiencing a similar emotional and mental state in each. Say, for example, I think that eternalism can lead to a sense of resignation, which I think has been touched on already, but also nihilism can lead to something like despair. And it's not always easy to tell those two things apart. So it's quite careful management is needed, quite careful, a lot of mindfulness as well as positive emotion, I'm sure, is needed to navigate between those two poles. I hope I haven't done violence to our discussion. Would anybody, Bryony or Savajit or Janice, like to add to that?
I'm not sure I can add from the conversation. I think that was a good summary. But something that I've been thinking about since you started talking about this, the Savaka, was I'm not sure you can be a nihilist and be a Buddhist. I don't think that's actually possible, unless you believe that you're going to get enlightened sometime in the next week or so. I quite like Roy's description of our impact in some way will be eternal, even if I won't be, kind of thing. And that's kind of what I think of with Buddhism, really, is that something of me, me, will continue in some way and influence some consciousness in the future that may or may not become enlightened. I may become enlightened this lifetime, but I'm not really betting the house on it. It strikes me that if you believe in nihilism and that everything ends at the end of this life, I'm not sure how that can fit with Buddhism. Just throwing that out there.
I look forward to your talk as well, Savage.
Yeah. It'll be pokey.
Yeah. Obviously it's a tricky subject to kind of be positive about all this stuff, isn't it? But I think somehow we got to find a way. There was a bit in Shantigaba's book about climate humour, and so I thought in a way that's kind of, trying to find an aspect of, like, I don't know, Shantigaba, can you say anything more about that?
You caught me on the hop, I'm afraid.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not sure I can. I'm busy with tech hosting. I'm not sure I can.
Yeah. I understand.
My mind. But what can I say? Well, I'd kind of weigh on this thing about eternalism and nihilism. So as I understand it, karma or conditionality is that things arise in dependence upon conditions. When those conditions cease, those things cease. So there isn't kind of eternal carrying forward of our impacts or whatever. It's like it may have an impact for a while, but at some point, if the conditions cease, it will cease. So things aren't the same or different. In the traditional teaching of rebirth, you can't say that character or that person is the same or different. There's some karmic continuity. That's how I understand it. The only time that I can remember that the word eternal comes up in the Buddhist, at least in the Theravada text, is this one. I put it in the chat there. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. So that's a very unusual, at least in the Theravada text, that's a very unusual use of the word eternal, sanatana or sanatana, something like that. So, but that's really strong stuff in the Theravada text to say that this is really, like, you can just take this as this is how things are. It's just can't imagine a time when this won't be true. So, but that also speaks to your thing about positive emotion and the importance of that. And well, traditionally, the gods, it's the Brahma Viharas. So if you practice the Brahma Viharas of metta, loving kindness and compassion and mudita and upekkha, at least temporarily, you are with the gods. You're experiencing a godlike existence, for that time, that you're experiencing dhyana, or sort of, experiencing the four Brahma Viharas. So there is some kind of connection there with, because with the god realm, with positive emotion. Although there is also a critique of that, which is that at some point even the gods fall from grace, and the first sign is they start to smell. And then that's the sign that your godlike, your merit has run out. And at that point, if you're not careful, you fall very rapidly down into the hell realm, because you haven't been acting skillfully for a long time. You've just been resting on your laurels. What comes up for you, Buddha Safika, when you hear all of that?
Well, I was just reflecting on the fact that you've posted that passage from the Dhammapada, which is also, I designed the leaflets when we do our street meditations for the Manchester Earth Sangha, and that kind of phrase is on the leaflet. Hatred does not cease by hatred alone, but like love, this is the eternal will. And so my mum, actually, who's like got some Christian conditioning in her background, has pinned that on the wall and does relate to that eternalism. I think she derives some sort of, because she's getting older, she's going grey, the dog's nearly, so everything's going in that direction, but she does get some solace out of that. So it's interesting how we as Westerners, respond to the eternal rule. Yeah, sorry if this has all been very kind of a bit disorganized, because that's what I am, really. But has anyone got anything else to share or anything?
Well, I didn't think it was disorganised. I thought it was really good and really interesting.
Sorry,
I missed the groups because I had to go out. But just to put my 2 pence in, sorry if it doesn't kind of fit with what's been said. But I can't help feeling like the Buddha was very skillful in not really getting into the eternalism, nihilism thing, because in a way it doesn't really matter. Like certainly in terms of action on climate change, we sort of need to act now regardless, don't we? Everything's changing, nothing's going to last forever, but at the same time there's still things we can do, and the same in our life. We can still have an impact in our life even if it did all end. I think nihilism, you could still be a Buddhist. You could just say, well, yeah, it might all end, but right now I can make a difference, or we can have an impact. So yeah, I think it doesn't matter either way, really. Whichever side of the spectrum you want to swing to, we still need to act, and act skillfully.
Yeah. Lovely. So sorry, Brownie.
Yes. We had a really good discussion in our group, and as far as the humor is concerned, I think the expression "you have to laugh or you'll cry," I think that's the thing. Humor helps so much in different situations, and I think it kind of brings you together with other people, and I think that's very important. Whatever the circumstances that you don't want, and I don't want, not that I've got grandchildren yet, but I wouldn't want them to be really upset and weighed down by this, because it's hard enough being a kid anyway. So I think that you have to try and keep an upbeat rather than a downbeat, have an upbeat rather than a downbeat approach. The other thing is, in our group with Janice, she's still here? No, she's gone. We were talking about traveling, and it was very useful to hear about your partner talking about traveling. And I have this sense of traveling before I die, because I come from a family of travelers. But it's so difficult sometimes. And I think the compassion thing comes in my daughter lives near Geneva. I'm going over with a friend of mine and her daughter in July. And we thought about going by train, but it costs like 3 or 4 times as much to go there. And also we had a baby. We've got a baby, like a 2-year-old, and she might be screaming in the train, nightmare and all that stuff. So we're going by plane. And then in December, my son, I've been to India a few times, India and Sri Lanka, and my son has asked me to go with him to India in December. And I'm kind of like quite chuffed in a sense. Why would he want to go with his old mum, you know? But I feel, well, this is a chance for us, probably the last chance we'll have to spend 3 weeks together. And compassion wise, I mean, I love my son to bits, as I do my daughter. And that is a very important thing, that, I mean, that those travels will stay with us and stay with him, you know. So I think that it's just such a tricky thing, isn't it, sometimes?
Yeah. Well, I've got 3 daughters myself, and you know, so one of the factors for me getting so involved in you know, the climate emergency was to try and make it easier for them going forward, or to somehow allow them for a better life in the future. So I think in a way that speaks to my eternalism. But like someone in our group said, you can't really think of your. Well, I find it very difficult to think of your kids in a nihilistic state of mind, really. So I suppose you've just got to go forward positively. I suppose if we can't find the middle way, then to err on the side of eternalism is the best way to go with it, really. Do you think we're done then? Yeah, lovely to like connect with you all. And yeah, so you've borne witness to my my first ever Dharma talk, which is a little bit fraught, but hopefully it went okay. But yeah, so yeah, I look forward to seeing you later on this retreat. I love like seeing all your faces actually. So thanks for turning up. Okay.
Right. Thanks, Bodhisavika. It's been
Okay.
great.
Cheers,
Yeah.
Annie.
I'm glad we were part of your first Dharma talk.
Thanks very much. You were wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So,
We'll be back
Great.
here. We'll be back here at 3 o'clock for a session on Indra's net as an ecological restatement of conditionality with myself. So yeah, big thanks to Bodhisavika for his bravery and courage in sharing his experience with us and making it very pertinent and very poignant. Yeah.
Thank you, Shantagama. Thanks for the tech hosting.
yeah. Okay. So thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, Nick.
Everyone, see you later.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, all right.
Bye. That was great.
Bye.
Good stuff.
Bye.
Bye.